Hello everyone! So today I'm going to be cooking some clams. These are a clam that are very popular in my home state of Rhode Island. I grew up eating these. We call them steamer clams. Some people call them Maine clams. There's different names for them, but we've always known them as steamers. So they're a little bit different than other clams because they have a membrane on their neck, and when you eat them, you have to pull that membrane off, otherwise it's not very tasty. But I'm going to go ahead and cook these up. I'm going to cook them in a very traditional style that we would cook them when I'm back home. Very simple, but these are very difficult to get perfect because you can overcook them very easy. So let's go ahead and start cooking them. All right, so I have 2 celeries that I cut up, 1 sweet onion, and then of course my pile of steamer clams here that we're gonna cook with the onions and celery. I do like this mix when the juices of the clams open up and mix with this. It will create a very, very nice sweet flavor. So it really accentuates the taste of the clams. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put these in first, and we're going to saute the onions. I want to saute them till they're a golden brown, because what it does, it brings out the sweetness in the onion, and it will also bring out the sweetness in the clams. All right, so let's go ahead and start getting them in the pan. Okay, so we've added in the onions. I put 2.5 tablespoons of butter in there. I do like the flavor of butter with the clams. It's an excellent blend. You can also add olive oil. You can do a combination of olive oil and butter. All really depends on what you like and if you want to change the flavor up to something a little bit different. All right, so we're going to go ahead and saute these onions until they're a golden brown. All right, folks, so before I finish sauteing the onions and move on to doing the clams, I want to make a very important point. When you're cooking seafood, always remember you're better to steam it than to boil it. And the reason why is when you add fresh water to something that lives in salt water, the fresh water doesn't have as much salt. And if you boil it, it will pull all of that salt out of the seafood, and it'll draw the flavor out also, which is called the brine. So the brine is that kind of salty, flavorful fluids that are inside of your clam or your snail. So always when I cook seafood, I only use, like shellfish, I only use about this much water, maybe a ½ an inch, because I want these to steam and then open up, spill their juices, and I want them to cook in their own juice or in their own brine. A very important point to make if you really want to be successful at making the most flavorful seafood that you possibly can. Better to steam than to boil. All right, well, and in Cajun, you would boil it, but you would add a massive amount of salt in it, which is a whole nother way of cooking. So this would be more of your French or Italian way. All right, so let's go ahead and we will get to the next step. All right, so our onions have now caramelized. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the celery. And what we're going to do next is I'm going to add a bunch of water in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let that water boil with the celery and the onions to really draw out that flavor. And we're going to let it reduce down until we only have about a ½ an inch of water left in the end. Then we will add our clams. But the key is we really want to boil this so we pull the flavor right out of those onions, right out of the celery. All right, so I will come back once we reduce this down. All right, so now we have reduced down the water. It's very hot. You can see all the steam coming off of it. And we're going to go ahead and add our clams in. So I'll come right back after I've added the clams, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, our clams have been added in. And now I'm going to go ahead and cover this for about Depends on the size of the clams. The very small ones we're only going to steam for about, maybe a minute and a half before we look to see what that. These are very large. So I'm going to give these about 2.5, 3 minutes, and then I'm going to look and we're going to see whether they've opened up or not. All right, so I'll be right back. All right, so it's been a few minutes. We can see one of them up top has opened up a little bit. Pretty soon I will start taking these out. I'm going to cover it again for about another minute to get the other ones to open up, and they should all start opening up pretty rapidly. You do not want to overcook these. So it's a very short span of time between undercooking and overcooking them. All right, so once they're done, I will be taking these out. All right, so these are now completely done. They fully opened up, and they are ready to be eaten. All right, so let's get to eating these. All right, so now here is a steamer clam opened up, sitting in its shell. I will be taking that out in just about a second and eating it. All right, so here we go. I'm going to take a little bit of the onion here. I'm going to put it in that juice along with the clam and some of the celery, piece of celery. Now, I also have a little bit of butter here. You melt that. So it adds a little bit to the flavor. I'm going to take it out gently so we don't, there's a muscle here that you have to detach it from. And then here is that membrane I was telling you about. So there we go. We're going to pull this membrane right off. There was a membrane right on here which you have to pull off, and that's what it looks like. So this guy's a little sandy. What you can do with these is dunk them in there in the juice that came out of them and spilt into the pan. Sometimes you can dunk them if they're very sandy. This one's not too bad. So that's what it looks like right there. And we're going to be eating that. We're going to dunk that in butter. Then I'm going to put this back in the shell here, and you can see that's in the shell. And now we're going to eat it with the juice. I really enjoy that brine that's in there. Absolutely fantastic. All right, so how we give this on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10. One of my favorite foods in the world is steamers. All right, folks, and thank you for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe.